people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this per tweet from Michael Benson. Katie Taylor's next fight will take place on October 29th at Wembley Arena in London, where she will defend her undisputed WBA, WBC, IBF, and WBO lightweight world titles. Eddie Hearn has revealed opponent to be announced.
I know a lot of people would have preferred to see her in a rematch with Amanda Serrano, but Amanda went her own way. And that's what I told you she was going to do immediately after that fight.
In my post-fight recap, without condoning or condemning, I told you, don't expect a second fight. Don't expect a rematch, at least not straight away. And that's exactly what happened.
Content creator Mr. Moonshine stated by way of his social media,
Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano was supposed to move the needle. Sorry, but Serrano is the co-main of a non-title fight was not the idea. Serrano and Taylor both should have their own card, own event after selling out the Garden. Serrano versus Taylor did not move the needle.
Amanda Serrano's fight is a title fight. It's a unification match. There are 3 titles on the line.
Amanda Serrano herself stated, my team has done a fantastic job keeping me active and paid. They're managers, not promoters, so they don't actually throw boxing cards. I've been with them less than a year, and I've made more in that time than most will in their lifetime. No complaints on my side. Thanks.
Immediately after the first fight, there was talk of doing the rematch at Croker Park.
Katie Taylor's neck of the woods in Ireland. And I told you right then and there, that rematch ain't going down, at least not straight away.
But that doesn't mean that the fight didn't move the needle. The fight definitely moved the needle.
Mr. Moonshine added, so I won't start devaluing her now. That would be crazy. Amanda Serrano is a headliner, period. But hey, if people over a sudden annoyed with it, I keep that opinion to myself, to which Amanda Serrano responded, we are good, buddy. I respect your opinion, and you have every right to it. I have the utmost respect for you, as you do for me. I just needed to make sure everyone understands that my managing team is trying hard for me. I love you, always, and it's cool for us to debate stuff. Family can. And I guess what Mr. Moonshine was trying to communicate is that given the reaction that Taylor versus Serrano got, you would have thought that they'd be headlining their own shows, even if they're not fighting each other.
Well, I heard Katie Taylor is going to headline her own show.
So even if that news doesn't check out, even if by some chance they're not headlining their own shows, that still doesn't mean that their fight didn't move the needle. It definitely moved the needle. It definitely shook up New York City. You could look out in the crowd and see that. The atmosphere was electric. The reaction to the fight was positive.
Anybody that watched that fucking fight, that was a Fight of the Year candidate. A bona fide Fight of the Year candidate.
I mean, just because the aftermath of the fight isn't what everybody wanted or what everyone expected, that doesn't necessarily mean that the fight didn't move the needle. It most certainly did.
Hey, for a perspective, here you have Frank Warren, a Hall of Fame promoter from the United Kingdom,
who stages cards in the United Kingdom, adding an American-based Puerto Rican fighter to his show.
That's progress. That wasn't normalcy in the past. That wasn't even normalcy not that long ago.
That shows that Amanda Serrano's celebrity has grown. So much so that a different promotional outfit, one that she's never even worked with before, wants to have her as part of their show, her unification match. I would say that's growth. Positive growth.
Amanda Serrano did say she wants to unify the featherweight division.
I don't know, maybe the way things unfolded after the fight surprised a lot of people, but it's mostly positive from where I'm sitting, and most of this is what I expected. So Katie Taylor is now in the market for an opponent that has yet to be announced, and the name of her old amateur rival from La France, Estelle Mosley-Yoka, almost immediately comes to mind. Estelle Mosley-Yoka, who's ranked the number 2 lightweight in the world by BoxRec's divisional rank standings, not to be confused with the Alphabet's rank standings that don't necessarily always represent the best and brightest fighters in a division.
She could settle up with Estelle Mosley-Yoka. She could take on Poland's own unbeaten fighter, Alexandra Sidorenko.
She can take on her old amateur buddy from Russia, Sofia Ochiguava, her arch nemesis. I mean, Katie Taylor, I trust her to take on somebody interesting because she's always made respectable choices.
And even if she decides to take her foot off the gas and take it easy, you tell me, who's earned that right more than Katie Taylor has?
I trust Katie Taylor to make a respectable choice. She always does.
So given that Estelle Mosley-Yoka has climbed up to the number 2 spot in BoxRec rank standings,
I kind of get the sense that she might take on Estelle. There are no other alphabet titles out there for Estelle Mosley-Yoka to fight for at lightweight, you understand. Katie Taylor has all of them, and Estelle Mosley-Yoka has been circling on the outskirts of the division, fighting fringe contenders for some years now.
She signed to Pro Bellum very recently and made her Pro Bellum debut, but she hasn't fought under the banner since then.
At some point, she's going to have to step it up because she's letting the parade go by and her best years as a fighter and an athlete. It's not the end of the world if she loses to Katie Taylor, you know.
She's young. She can rebound. She's got plenty of time.
And Estelle Mosley-Yoka, as an opponent for Katie, would be a pretty respectable choice at this time. An Olympic gold medalist, an unbeaten fighter, an up-and-comer. Makes sense. So maybe it'll be Estelle, maybe it'll be somebody else, but in any event, I trust Katie Taylor to make a respectable choice, because she always does. Men's featherweight news. I'm sure most of you have heard by now that Lee Wood pulled out of the Mauricio Lara fight due to an injury. He released a public statement that reads, "Heartbreaking to confirm that I have had to postpone my fight against Mauricio Lara with a torn bicep. My sympathy is with Lara, who I'm sure has also been working extremely hard for this fight. The event will still go ahead on the 24th, and I would like to wish all the best to the other fighters on the card. It would be great if you could all still attend and offer your support, or if you would prefer a refund, this must be requested by Monday, the latest, via place of purchase. Sorry to all. I will be back with a new date very soon." And a torn bicep is a nasty injury. Deontay Wilder suffered a torn bicep. I think it was in the areola fight. It rolled up into his deltoid.
It's gross, man.
He'll be out for a few months, perhaps even the rest of the year. It can take at least 2 months for that kind of injury to heal.
But Eddie Hearn says he will look to reschedule Wood versus Lara once Lee Wood is injury-free.
Being honest with you guys, I don't know that this fight actually gets rescheduled, because by the time that Lee Wood recuperates from that torn bicep, the winner of Leo Santa Cruz versus Ray Vargas, which is supposed to be up next, the winner of that fight will have emerged. And it just so happens that Lee Wood is the mandatory challenger for the winner of that fight by way of the WBA. So why would he prioritize fighting Lara on the rebound instead of fighting the winner of that fight? Or at least putting them in a position to where they either have to fight him or forfeit the WBA title. Why would he do that? It just doesn't make sense.
Remember how they landed on Lara? Initially, they were trying to get a Leo Santa Cruz fight
for the full WBA title, and they reached a step-aside agreement of some sort, and that's what led to the Mauricio Lara fight. Entertaining fight that it might have been. I always thought it's foolhardy to go into a Lara fight when that's what you're waiting on, when that's what you're shooting for. The winner of Leo Santa Cruz versus Ray Vargas.
That fight.
And their unification match just didn't make a lot of sense, especially when Team Conlon, Mick Conlon, who Lee Wood knocked out earlier this year in a Fight of the Year, Knockout of the Year candidate, the Conlon people want a rematch. Mick has gotten himself back in the winner's bracket. He just won a points decision over Miguel Mariaga. His brother, Jamie Conlon, was talking about that very recently. They want to go again. They want a second fight.
And they want to do it in December. If Lee Wood manages to recover by December, he's better off doing that than taking on Mauricio Lara, just being honest.
Very recently, Sam Jones of S-Jam Boxing, he echoed those sentiments. He's pretty much saying the same thing I've been saying the whole time. Wood versus Lara is a great fight. And Lee Wood, you know, he's a tough guy, strong guy, great fighter. But he would be facing certain peril with Mauricio Lara, needlessly, I might add, when he has other options.
I'm happy about that. Because I actually like Lee Wood. I'm happy about that. Stupid decision to fight Lara in the first place. Listen, people can say, oh, he's brave and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, 100% very brave. Big balls, no problem. Big balls, small brains.
So what do you think the outcome would have been of that fight if it had?
I think Lara would have took him out. I will tell that to Lee. Like, I will message Lee Wood is a great fighter, yeah? He's a great fighter. Gritty, tough, hard as fucking nails, Lee Wood is. However, Lara's a monster. He's unpredictable. He's horrible. And he doesn't bring anything to the table other than a huge right hand. And, like, all that Lee Wood will get from that fight is, yeah, he'll get massive plaudits, congratulations, you won, but he'll need a Nurofen and a lie down.
I'm not advocating that Lee Wood swerve Mauricio Lara. If they want to reschedule that fight, they can reschedule that fight, and I'll watch that fight. But what I'm saying is I'm not banking on them rescheduling that fight, because by the time Lee Wood recuperates from that injury, other options, better options, will become available. So I'm not convinced the fight actually gets rescheduled. The same way I wasn't convinced that Josh Warrington would share the ring with Mauricio Lara for a third time.
And he didn't. He ended up fighting Kiko Martinez for the red belt.
Do I think Lee Wood is scared of Mauricio Lara? No, I don't. That's a tough guy. But his management, they'll probably figure there are better things for us to have this guy doing than taking his chances against Mauricio Lara. Because even if he wins, what does he get out of it?
So the show's gonna go on, and it's gonna be headlined by Maxie Hughes and Kid Galahad. Not an easy fight for Maxie Hughes.
No, it's not. But the spotlight fight of the card for me always was Rankin versus Harper for Hannah Rankin's WBA junior middleweight title. Being honest with you, that's the fight that I was looking forward to the most.
Rhiannon Dixon's fighting on that card too. I'm looking forward to that.
I mean, I'm still going to watch the card. I'm still going to take in the show for what it's worth from the comfort of my own home. But as far as them rescheduling a Lara fight for Lee Wood upon his return when he's all healed up, I'm not holding my breath. He'll have better options by the time he does come back that perhaps pay better.
Wait a minute. What are they going to do for Mauricio Lara?
They can always find him some ham and egg guy to fight on the undercard of a bigger show, or they can build a show around him south of the border because Matchroom does stage shows in Mexico.
Yeah, let him rack up another highlight reel knockout. He's good for one of those. They can always find him somebody to fight. Keeping him busy shouldn't be too hard.
Before I go to that, you know what? Now I thought about it. I'm gonna root for Triple G, so he can win. Maybe he could give us a fight. You know,
you think Triple G will fight?
Yeah, Triple G will fight anybody. Yeah. He don't give a fuck. He doesn't care about nationality. So you know what? I'm gonna go for Triple G to win. I'm gonna be cheering for him so we can get that fight with Triple G.
If you needed a barometer for how desperate the Benavidez camp are for a meaningful fight, a signature fight, all you have to do is count the amount of times that a member of their team, whether it's David or his father, all you have to do is count the amount of times they mention Canelo Alvarez, a fighter who isn't on their side of the street, may not be on their side of the street for the next 1 to 2 fights, maybe more, depending on what happens with this weekend's fight and what happens after that. I mean, surely the PBC, who have several prized stallions in the super middleweight division, can find something for David and his father to do besides name-dropping Canelo Alvarez and worrying about Canelo. This is what happens when you make your entire career about one guy and one fight. This is what happens. This is what happened to Charlo. This is what's happening to David Benavidez.
This is what happens. Canelo Alvarez has the luxury of choice. You don't.
You never did. And it's like a lot of PBC fighters have been sold a bill of goods by a snake oil salesman. Empty promises, it seems like. They're so focused on a guy who's not even fighting on any of their affiliate networks, any of their affiliate platforms, a fighter who the PBC doesn't have under contract, and you're going to base the movements in your career off of his movements? You can't control him.
Do you hear this guy? He thinks that if Gennady Golovkin wins this weekend, David's got a shot at fighting him.
Let me tell you something. If Gennady Golovkin were to pull off the upset, the massive upset this weekend, that would likely lead to a fourth Canelo Alvarez fight if the guy doesn't just decide to up and retire off of that victory, off of that win. He's made plenty of money already. He's 40 years old.
Did you hear what he said, though? That Gennady's willing to fight anybody, but Canelo isn't. Canelo, the 4-division champion.
Canelo, the guy that's fought as low as welterweight to as high as light heavyweight, while your overgrown son
doesn't want to move up in weight. He keeps waiting in the kiddie pool so that he can fight naturally smaller fighters than he is when he's long overdue for a move upstairs.
He thinks he's got a shot at fighting Gennady Golovkin. He likely heard the story that Gennady Golovkin, beyond this upcoming weekend's fight, will be a network and promotional free agent. Golovkin, who signed...
He signed a 6-fight contract with DAZN, and he told a group of reporters at the MGM Grand...
He told them that this third Canelo Alvarez fight will be his last fight with DAZN.
Now, most people are picking Gennady Golovkin to lose this thing. They're picking him to lose it on points or perhaps get stopped.
But on the off chance that he pulls the upset this weekend, he actually wins. The most lucrative option for an aging Gennady Golovkin, an aging fighter and an aging champion, the most lucrative option would be to fight Canelo Alvarez for a fourth time.
David Benavidez, Morrell, these guys aren't on Gennady Golovkin's radar.
When have you ever heard Gennady Golovkin talk about fighting these guys? You know, Demetrius Andrade, he used to be on the same side of the street as Gennady, campaigning as a champion in the same division as Gennady, where Gennady still holds 2 alphabet titles, the middleweight division. And Gennady Golovkin never once entertained the possibility of unifying titles with him. So why would he fight a David Benavidez if he just beat Canelo Alvarez? There's more money in a Canelo Alvarez.
Those guys at the PBC need to find something for David to do because neither Gennady Golovkin or Canelo Alvarez are available.
For the longest time, the argument amongst PBC shills and Haymanites was that, you know, guys that want fights with PBC fighters need to come over to the PBC. But for what? For what? So that you can spend all your free time name-dropping fighters that aren't on your side of the street? Because that's what these guys seem to be doing.
That's all they seem to be doing. Worrying about Canelo, worrying about Gennady.
You need to get that kid a fight is what you need to do. Get him a Carlos Gongora. Get him an Anthony Sims. Get him somebody.
And if there's nothing available for him right now and there won't be for the next 2 fights, you know what? Move him upstairs to light heavyweight. It's about time.
You can't have 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 guys standing on line, single file, playing it safe, waiting to fight the same guy. That's not going to work. Your career will die on the vine.
The David Morrell fight fell through. The Morrell fight that David was supposed to be having in the fall.
The battle of the Davids, the unbeaten Davids, the Davids that are on the PBC side of things. David Morrell looks to be fighting some guy from Kazakhstan. I think it's his mandatory challenger.
The chickens have come home to roost. That's what I see here.
For years now, the PBC have had at least 2 of the 4 alphabet titles on their side of the street. There are at least 2 separate cycles of alphabet champions, world champions. They've had the WBC title there and the IBF title there. And there was a time when both David and Caleb Plant were reigning as unbeaten champions parallel to each other. The opportunity was there for them to make that fight so that David Benavidez can really establish himself as a force in this division, and they squandered the time.
The pandemic is no excuse because Morrell had a unification match in the thick of the pandemic.
They staged that Rosario unification match in the bubble, behind closed doors. They should have done that between David and Caleb, and they chose to put David in there with the Romer Angulo guy. He lost his title on the scales, and the rest, as they say, is history. So I don't pity these guys.
You had your chance, my friend, and you fucked it off.
It's your own fault.